Okay, well, I guess whatever you say goes, but
Yes,
I like, okay, no, it doesn't, dude. Okay?
it
Don't make me
does.
fucking go off because I will, and I'm like at the edge. Just let me know if you want it.
Because Joe doesn't
Because I
watch the
bring.
shows.
Hey, listen!
That's
I'd
gonna make it
like
on
to
the...
hear the fucking perspective of a fan that watches the show. Is that too much to ask for?
So this is like a week old, but I saw it a few days ago and wanted to talk about it a little bit. This is Konnan and Disco Inferno's podcast with their producer Joe. Konnan and Disco are retired pro wrestlers. Konnan's still involved in the business, but there was a discussion on this podcast that got rather heated, and it was pretty fun to watch. So we're going to check it out and chat about it.
EJF, the Creative Control Network, his pro wrestling tea store, his room, and being the co-host of the Raven Effect.
I love that show.
Well, first of all, the t-shirt store is first and foremost on the list because Joe is refusing to make t-shirts that would actually sell.
So a lot of this, it's an argument between Konnan and Disco, but it sort of revolves around Joe and Konnan's perceived laziness of Joe.
Based on the listeners of this show saying, yes, we would buy a real Philly guy t-shirt.
Yes.
And Joe just doesn't
what
want to
can
sell
you say? He doesn't even have time to tell me when people call him back to be on the show, or to watch most of the wrestling shows, or to what was the other thing he just said?
Joe doesn't.
Right there, the wrestling shows line, or to watch most of the wrestling shows. That's where the most of the heat of this video comes from.
Have to
Time
watch
for it.
wrestling shows. You make a big stink out of him not watching the shows. I don't see anything wrong
So
with
you don't think that a producer of any show, whether it's sports, whatever it is, they should be watching what they're producing? Especially, wait a minute, dude. Especially if he's on the show talking.
He's not getting paid a dime.
And right there, that is the key point that I agree with. This is a show about wrestling, and you don't have to be a wrestling fan for that to resonate with you. You just have to be a fan. If you're a fan that takes in any podcast or show that is based off of a product that you don't always watch, you're relying on them to give you a critique of the product or to give you a breakdown or review of the product, you are expecting those people to know what they're talking about.
From AEW or anybody to watch those shows.
My
point is,
Which is not true. Disco just said, here, I'll go back.
he's not getting paid a dime from AEW or anybody to watch those shows.
Yeah, he's not getting paid a dime by AEW, but it is his job. They have a segment where they review AEW Dynamite. We're doing a segment where they are reviewing an entire episode of a certain type of show, of a certain show. You certainly should know what you're talking about. You should be up to date on that.
My point is,
Neither.
let me finish my point since you were being very angry there, okay? I like the perspective of having somebody on the show that isn't interested enough in watching the show when the show isn't that good. We already have two voices here that watch all the shows.
So you like to have the perspective of someone who has no perspective because they didn't watch it. Liking the show and disliking the show is different than not watching it entirely. There's a very limited perspective from somebody who didn't watch it. You know what that perspective is? Hey Joe, what'd you think of the show? I don't know, I didn't watch it.
Joe watches some of the shows.
Yeah, but
I
I'd like
the
to
dynamic.
hear. I'd like to hear a fan. Okay, well, I guess whatever you say goes. But
Yes.
I like. Okay, no, it doesn't, dude. Okay, don't
It
make me
does.
fucking go off because I will, and I'm like at the edge.
And I'm like at the edge. It's so great.
Just let me know if you want it.
Because Joe doesn't
'cause
watch the shows?
Hey, listen!
That's
I'd
gonna make
like
it
to
on the-
hear the fucking perspective of a fan that watches the show. Is that too much to ask for?
No, Konnan, no. It is absolutely not too much to ask for.
I'd like the perspective of a guy that does watch a show when it's good, which he does. He used to
so
watch a
there's
show, he
no
doesn't
good
watch it because the
segments?
shows
There's
aren't
no
good.
good segments at all? The whole fucking show sucks?
No, I'm just saying it's...
Which exactly, that is my big gripe with this. Disco's point is that Joe shouldn't have to watch the show if it's bad. His perspective should just be that the show is bad, and he can come in and tell us, well, it's bad, and I don't watch it because it's boring and it's bad. That's well and good. If you watch it, it's totally fine to say, well, it's boring and bad. But as a person who is supposed to be watching this show and giving honest criticisms on their podcast, how do you know if the show is worth watching, if the show is boring, if you aren't taking it in on a regular basis and actually watching it? I believe Joe even concedes at a certain point that it is his job and that he should be watching the shows. But Disco really likes to go to bat for apparently this perspective of no perspective. I like to hear the perspective of someone who isn't watching the show, which to me is kind of silly.
It's like, the guy's freaking busy.
So am I!
Well, that's fine, but we watch it, and I'm interested in watching it. Joe's not interested in watching it.
I do.
I could literally,
excuse,
Conan, I could literally not be watching these shows at all.
Did you hear that? Disco said, Joe's not interested in watching it. And Conan rightfully said, that's not a good excuse, dude. And Joe even said, no, that's not a good excuse. When you're getting paid to make a podcast where you critique a certain product, you finding that product disinteresting is not a good reason for you to not watch that product. If anything, it should be more of a motivator for you to watch the product and make the criticisms on your show about why it's not good.
I could literally not watching these shows at all.
I could imagine me going to WWE and them going, hey, do you watch any of the shows? No, because they're not that good anymore.
No.
What do you think they would say to me?
No. But think about this. You're just getting my opinion on content, right? I could literally not even be watching these shows and commenting on it, and you would never know.
And therein lies a problem, Disco. That's not a good thing. You should be striving to have integrity on that. Honestly, that's why this is such an issue to me, because if you're doing that, that's being very dishonest. And as a viewer, as a fan, as somebody who doesn't watch AEW all the time, I rely on things like this, people talking about it that say they've watched it. I'm taking your word for it. So if you tell me a segment happened the way that you say, I'm taking your word for it. As far as I know, it happened that way. So I'm relying on you to not do that. That's why this is important.
That's thing. So I don't.
Well, I would know because when I would bring shit up and you didn't know how to answer it, I would know. And you've done that before.
Because
I think in my head, and I don't want to bury you. I go, he didn't watch this segment.
Okay, but here's the thing.
And I think that might be part of why Disco is so defensive of this when Joe is almost completely conceding that he's in the wrong. I think Disco is probably guilty of doing the exact same thing, and that's why he's defending not watching the show so hard. And that's why he even outed himself with the last thing he just said, essentially saying sometimes he just bullshits his way through segments that he hasn't seen, when he really should just be honest and be like, I didn't see that one, I didn't watch that one.
Well, here's the thing. Like when Harry Ruiz comes on, I love hearing his opinion because he's a fan. And he doesn't see the things we see.
Okay.
Joe's gotten smarter over the years because he's with Raven, he's with us, but he's still a fan. So I like to hear his viewpoint. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, well,
I'm way more up on WWE
the fact he doesn't have a viewpoint sometimes. You know?
Huh?
That's okay, I guess, and conceding that you haven't watched something is fine, and not having an opinion on something is fine. But you are on here to have an opinion. Like that's why you're here. You were here to have an opinion, so much so that like we're talking about a show that you do reviews of. So yes, you should have an opinion, all three of you, all three of the people that know that segment is happening and that you're going to be involved in it should have an opinion. You should have watched the product and you should have an opinion. I'm not sure why Disco is so focused on that being a good thing. Like, I like sometimes when people can bring nothing to the conversation. I like sometimes when you go, hey, what do you think about that? And they say, nothing.
I'm way more up on WWE
the fact he doesn't have a viewpoint sometimes. You know?
Huh? What?
Joe, why don't you watch the shows?
Well, I watch. It's also we discuss on the show different ways to watch and stuff. When it comes to WWE, I do read all the show reports, so I'm up on it. But I will watch clips. I go to the YouTube channel and there's the 10 best moments of Raw, or there's a clip. Oh, I want to see more. I want to see that whole promo. I'll watch that. AEW, I have not been interested. But WWE, I'm way more up on and enjoying more.
Yeah, because they offer a million ways to watch the content if you're missing the show.
Yeah.
And Joe is deciding to watch some of their content that way, like a lot of people do. Bro, there's only 1.5 million people watch the shows each week, and 700,000 people watch AEW. There's millions of other people that watch it just like Joe is, just reading the material and watching the clips. I don't see anything wrong with getting perspective from somebody like that.
It's because you're the ones creating the content. He can take it in from those sources as well. When you're doing a review, like a full review of the full show, top to bottom, you should have watched it, or at least watched most of it.
Perspective from somebody like that. You do, because you think we should all watch the shows, but then you're like Meltzer and Alvarez, we just watch the shows from start to
Don't
finish.
talk for me, jackass.
Okay.
Don't think for me, okay?
All right.
I have no problem him consuming it that way, as long as he's watching it and he has some fucking wherewithal of what's going on. But I don't like working with somebody that doesn't have the time or the effort of watching what he's talking about. Now, another reason why I think he doesn't watch it, because he said it a million times, I don't watch the shows. He never said, I don't watch the shows, but I watch the clips. And on top of that, for a while he wasn't watching anything.
Yeah.
And I stayed with that in my mind.
Yeah.
Okay? I don't think it's a lot to ask that the thing you're getting paid from and that you talk on the show, that you're not to at least watch something.
That is very true. I would say that he should watch the full show. I don't think he should be watching just clips necessarily, but there is a lot of, I'm not saying you should have to watch every episode of every weekly wrestling show out there. There is so much wrestling content out there for you to take in. But I am saying that if you are doing a review, which they do reviews on Dynamite, and it's like a 50-minute review of the full show. If you are doing that on your show, then you should feel obligated to have done your homework on that show. Again, I'm not saying every single weekly show. If you're doing a wrestling podcast, you need to have watched every single wrestling show out there. But if you are dedicating 50 minutes of your time to do an entire review of a weekly show, then you should have at least watched that one.
Right.
That's it.
I would suggest that I could see that, but I would suggest that if you're keeping it 100, you shouldn't have to be compelled to do.
100.
You shouldn't have to compelled to do anything. Like you're.
That's ridiculous to me. You shouldn't have to be compelled to do anything. If you're keeping it 100, you shouldn't have to be compelled to do anything. And I understand what he's saying. He's saying, like, if you want Joe to be totally true and honest about it and be himself on the show, then let him be honest about how he hates the show and he doesn't want to watch it because it's terrible. And that's the take that he can give every single week, is that I haven't watched it. Really, in my opinion, if you want to keep it 100 and be totally honest, you should suck it up, watch the show, go on and give good critiques about why it sucked this week. Watch the boring show, go on to your podcast and talk about why it was boring, talk about why it sucked and what they need to change. Not just ignore it and say I didn't watch it because it sucks.
Forcing him to watch shows.
Well,
I don't think he should be under the banner of somebody that you're
my job to
pressuring
know
to watch the show.
Thank you, Joe. And that's where I remember him speaking up at some point. He eventually speaks up and he says, well, it is my job to know about it.
I've
I think he should be under the banner of somebody that you're
my job to
pressuring to watch the show.
I've always
I do pressure him. I don't force
Okay,
him.
so I'm saying I would rather get a perspective.
Force him would be a whole different. Yeah.
That if we could convince him to watch the shows if stuff was good, he would probably start watching the shows.
I've watched, but I
there's
don't
nobody
watch
except to
like
watch.
I don't watch like I did in '98, where I sit down at 9 o'clock. But as the week goes on, and if I know we're doing SmackDown Wednesday, I'll probably watch clips.
Bro,
Tuesday.
I understand.
I'm gonna put your
let me just
outburst
say
on the
one
disco
thing.
list.
Let me just say one thing. Let me just say one thing.
Go ahead.
I have no problem with him watching content because at least he's familiar with what's going on and he can speak on it, which he very rarely does anyways. But so he can speak on it. I don't have a problem with that. I was still under the assumption, because there was a while, correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, where you weren't watching no clips, you weren't watching shit, right?
Yeah, you're right.
And I stayed with that in my mind. So I apologize, but I like the rant that I did anyways.
All right, well, I'm going to
too.
put that rant on the disco list. So write
All right.
that down. Unsolicited attack. It was a verbal. It was an attack. You
It
attacked.
was.
Verbal
It was.
assault.
You attacked.
I warned you ahead of time.
Yeah, you
Didn't give a fuck.
It was. Yeah.
Unsolicited.
Oh, well, I get a load of this.
Disco.
So Harry had the disco versus
Oh,
better than
well.
Calisthane.
Nah, that's about it. It was, these guys are, make no mistake, these guys are friends, and that is a very rare thing, and you can see they just moved on right afterwards. They went on to do the rest of this podcast. This is just one clip from a long podcast that they do, and they went on to do the rest of it, no problem. They don't yell at each other all the time. I just thought this was a very entertaining clip. I disagree with Disco here. I disagree with Disco pretty frequently, but you could disagree with somebody and still be a big fan. I'm a huge fan of Konnan and Disco in this podcast. Definitely check it out if you haven't. Peace.